Okay, so here we are. We've got our block out in our scene, right? So all you guys should be at this point by now. Your block out should be in place. And this is a version of mine in stepped. And I have my key and extreme poses in, right? Okay. So key and extremes, right? Obviously you're starting and your ending poses, your main anticipations as far as if they're extreme, right? Which a lot of them are. I have a slight up in preparation before my squash down, my extreme down to shift my weight over, prepare to pick up my foot. I have my passing pose. I have my contact. Then I hit and squash again, extreme down pose after that before I shoot up and then settle down into my final pose. Okay, boom, boom. That's the rhythm of how you're moving your character through space, right? That's what we're trying to define. All right, so I just wanted to stop real quick and look at my analysis. So we're moving on to breakdowns, right? And I'm going to call them major breakdowns, okay? I've always thought of that in terms of, even keys. For me, keys and extremes, they're both keys, but the key poses are the ones you put in first, the extremes you do on your second pass. So there's high keys and lower keys, which are extremes. Pretty much with breakdowns. I've just defined really major breakdowns for the most part in here. There's going to be more poses in order to help slow in and maybe even break this down thing a little bit farther. I've only really indicated like a breakdown in between each key or extreme pose at this point, where I probably could get it a lot closer and find more reasons to put more poses in. At this point I didn't want to overdo it. I feel if you guys are finding at least one major breakdown, that's going to be helpful, okay? Because even then, a lot of you might not see that there are changes happening that you need to address and build, because they are different extreme poses, okay? So I'm scrubbing through, and I can see that my first breakdown I come across is sort of a breakdown on the way down into my anticipation, okay? So you see what I'm really looking to do with this pose is really bring my character down, yes, but I'm really looking to loosen him up and leave the upper body up a little bit longer and not as stiff as I'm coming down. So it, again, exaggerating. And this is where you as an artist need to be creative and think about this stuff. Think about the force to loosen this thing up. To exaggerate it. Okay, so I even see my head stretching and whatever and staying back before it comes down. Okay, and then my next breakdown, you can see it's all about force. It's just a scribble saying I'm pushing up to pick up my leg, so I'm going to push that. It's a pretty bold step, right? So I want to push as much as I can. I'm going to be dragging as much of the upper torso and arms and maybe even head before it all comes up into my passing pose on the way. The anticipation here, and again, people may even argue that the up, or even call it anticipation with my leg, could be an extreme pose. So it's really preference if you want to label it an extreme. I kind of decided to put it in the breakdown pass, but here you can see I'm really going to anticipate the leg coming down, so it stomps a little bit harder, and I'm going to hold my character up nice and high and even hold his weight back on that leg a little longer so he can stretch more in, because you can see me falling down with my leg, and I'm going to change that a little bit more to amplify that. My contact, I'm holding my body weight up also, and I'm bringing my leg down sooner. I'm a little bit, stompier at the end on mine because my leg will jet out in the last couple of frames, but my body's falling already, so I'm going to hold back my body and then bring everything down. So there's my up pose as a breakdown, and then here I'm going to come up, and here again I'm forcing, my body's coming up into the overshoot, so I'm going to play with that. I'm looking to drag my upper body so it doesn't come up too soon as my body comes up, and then it'll all slow in and maybe catch up before it kind of slows back in again as it comes down and settles down. Okay, so that was my analysis. Again, the idea with breakdowns, you are looking between your keys and extremes, and you are finding ways to loosen up your character. Okay, under here you can see I wrote arcs, offsetting, and favoring. Okay, they will help support your arcs. And I'll be looking to do that, and they will, as you can see, offset and favor things, okay, as far as body position and even timing and all that, okay. So let's move in. What I've done here is I did some animating and recorded it and sped it up. So I'm going to play through that a little bit and just talk about my process. There's going to be really kind of two major things I'm going to be pushing you for. Obviously, you're going to create and key the breakdowns, right? But incorporating the graph editor into your workflow is crucial. If you want to be an animator, you can't do it without the graph editor. If you want to bring your work to a higher level of completion, which is required in this portfolio class, you need to use the graph editor. You will be graded on it too, so you got to bite the bullet if you're avoiding it and start using it now. Okay, so I'm going to kind of talk about this, and then I'll kind of get into the scene and do a little bit of work to show you kind of a little bit more at a slower pace of how I go about doing this. Okay. So let's hit play, and you're going to see I just open up the scene the way it was in step, took it out of stepped, and now I'm kind of building that first breakdown where my character's weight is coming down into the anticipation. Okay, and you can see I'm dragging the upper body so it stays up while the hips come down. Okay. Now I'm kind of, you can see I'm in the graph editor already thinking about how fast or slow he moves, left or right, up or down, back and forward, and I'm trying to control that smoothly. So the idea of progression, like you've learned, is all about understanding that graph editor and kind of like knowing that what you're trying to do with the mechanics and the force and the speed at which your character is moving. I'm fixing his feet now as he comes down. I don't want his feet to be slow to come down. I want them to kind of come down faster. After I get the torso and the feet worked out, you can see me looking at the arcs in the hands and trying to smooth out and open up those arcs so that they work better using those breakdowns now that I'm putting more poses in. Okay. So I build the overall pose, and I think about the core first, and I get in the graph editor and I support that, and I offset some of the stuff I'm talking about. And then I look towards appendages like, you know, the hands and the feet and stuff like that, and try and clean those up as well. Here you can see me keeping the foot down as I push up. The foot will stay on the ground longer as the body pushes up, and the upper torso is getting, this is me on the way up to pick up that foot, and the breakdown I'm creating there where I want the upper body to basically drag down as the, you know, as the lower body pushes up to go into that passing pose. So that's me again trying to control that in the graph editor and create that drag on the upper body. Now I'm moving on to the arms once again to think about the arc in which they swing into the body. The other one, now I'll revisit that one and evaluate the arc and how it's going through all those poses. And I am finessing all the poses. I'm changing all the poses, the keys around the breakdowns, not just the breakdowns. Okay. Now I'm into that up pose. You see me building that next pose. And again, I'm keying these whole poses. The breakdowns are whole poses too. I just key the whole pose, and then I work with my auto key on to repose it and turn it into the breakdown it's supposed to be. There's my anticipation. I'm going to pull up that leg a little bit so it anticipates up and then comes down. I'm pulling up my character on its toe quite a bit. You can see me working with how I want to use my toe controls in order to get him to come a little bit higher. And it's a combination, as you can see. I do a lot of work in the graph editor. But I also pose my character with the auto key on and do a lot of work right there. Okay. With the hands, I'll clean up the hands later, but right now it's just easier to rough them out quickly because there's translates and rotates involved. So instead of doing it all in the graph editor, I'll do it out there in Maya world space and then clean it up later. Okay. And there's me once I've kind of got something working. I'll always kind of scrub through it. And notice I'm working with my shot camera open too, because when I'm looking at the arcs, I want to be aware of what the arcs look like in the shot camera, because that's the important thing. You could have great arcs in the window you're working with in your perspective, but if you don't have clean arcs in your shot camera, well then they're not going to read well, right? Because at the end of the day, the shot camera in this case is going to tell the story. Yeah, me making decisions about progression, about how, and I'm looking at the translate and the arc that I'm creating in that hand to try and control that, you know, when things are slow, when they're fast, if things are moving too much, I'll try and calm them down at times. I'm looking at the rotates real quick just to smooth those out also. All right, so a bit much to take in, right? Okay, so let me slow that down, and I'm going to get out of this, and then I'll jump into that actual Maya scene. I can find it. There we go. All right, so here's that Maya scene, and let me take a look at those first poses I put in anyhow. Okay, so here is, and I'll pull down my graph editor a little bit just so you can see a little bit clearer. Here is my first breakdown as my body's coming down. Let me show you what I was really doing, right? So I wanted my body to come down fast, you know, and hard, but I didn't want the upper body to come down. You can kind of see that. The upper body stays up, and then it comes down and squashes. See it? And there's my down pose, or my anticipation, in order to come up, okay? So that's where I was kind of building. I kind of keyed the pose, and then I basically started pulling him down. You saw me in the graph editor. I was saying, okay, how I want him to come down faster. And again, this is understanding progression. This is kind of even. This would be even a little faster of my body coming down, right? So that would be coming down even faster, and then slowing in a little bit as you crunch to a halt before you start pushing yourself up again. And then even here, this is me pushing up faster, right, to launch myself, and then I get a little slower as I peak. Okay, so understanding that and a simple idea like that, and starting at the hips is a great place to start, especially the up and down. Badoom, you can think of that. Then obviously you can branch off into how do I go side to side, and I can look to see if that progression is smooth here, right? Here's me anticipating and starting to slow out and come down as this key starts to go slightly up, and I need a little more space here for my graph editor. That's me coming a little bit more onto the right, his left leg, I should say, before he comes over a little bit more on the anticipation, and then comes up onto that leg, right? And if I really wanted to push that more, I could probably push it a little bit more over. And now's the time to do that, because you can see you can lock out an arm, and I can just quickly even, you know, make sure that arm is coming with me, and it's coming with me here, okay? Boom, and that gets me over. So checking out all those, and obviously checking out the rotates. You can see me too on this breakdown when he's coming down. This one, if I look at the rotate X, which is controlling a lot of this, let's see what I did there. See, I reversed the rotate X to kind of open him up to say, well, let's have this push down this way. And then I went to the spine, and I did the opposite. Again, it always comes back to contrapposto. If you want that spine to change a bit and your character to be organic, well, then now these go the opposite way in order to create that drag, see it? Before they reverse again and then crunch down. And if I want to, I can even push that, say, maybe they didn't crunch that far. Maybe they crunch more when I push up, which they should, right? And there I can even push that a little bit more, right? Does that feel better? Okay? And obviously you can see him whip around a little bit too much. That's how I rotate Y. Okay? I can check my rotate Y, and that's what getting used to driving your rig is about, you know, and that was the idea of the walk. If you're whipping around too much, well, what is controlling that? The rotate Y in this case. Well, maybe my rotate Y is a little too fast. So let's slow that down a little bit. Maybe that'll feel a little bit smoother. Maybe I push it too far here. Well, let's turn him a little bit more here and soften that up a little bit. Okay? Again, working in here and working in here, you have your notes, you have access to grab and manipulate, and here you're really seeing basically how it's going to be working or not working in your shot camera. Okay, so let me scrub forward and just build one and show you guys kind of the process in which I use. And let's look for my next breakdown. I have my up in here already, and then I'm going to contact and squash. And then on the way up, I'm going to be building another breakdown because my body's going to come up. And then it'll settle up here, and I wanted to push that. I know I'm very stiff to do it, and if you know, obviously if that's the style or you want your character to be a little more realistic, you won't exaggerate as much as I'm going to, but you can see I'm going, okay, I'm pushing up, I'm coming up kind of fast, I'm going to build something here to break it down and have my character kind of drag a little bit, and then stand up a little straighter. So I'll just key this pose, and this is why I work out of step, is because instead of having to lug him in the right direction, I can basically just grab a pose and take the in-between, turn that into a key. So I'll hit key, which will key it all. I have my auto key on by default, and I know that I want to start pushing him up a little faster, so I'll even jump right to translate Y on his hips and say, yep, you're going up quicker. So I'm going to push his hips up. I'm even going to arch him back a little bit. So I'll take his hips this way and push. Oops. I'm looking for rotate. There we go. Rotate X. And rotate X to push him back a little bit more and overshoot him a little bit. And then I'll just quickly take his spine and kind of do the same to kind of get that drag once again going in on there. So now he'll push up and stay down, and then his body will open up as he settles in. Okay, I'm going to check what's going on with rotate Z, because you can see him kind of rock back a little bit. And this is where it gets a little complicated. My character is moving in Z and X, so controlling that, you've really got to take a look even at those channels. So if I look at my hips real quick, I can see where he's going. He's coming down and then coming up here. Yeah, let's just keep him moving smooth. That's fine where it is as far as him moving back in Z. And that's why if you're out of step, it'll help you keep moving at times so you don't get too many flat lines, as we call them, meaning your character sticking and popping. Here I might even want to rethink what I'm doing here. This gets a little tight in here, so maybe I'll keep him over, which is going to put him a little bit more over on this leg, and then so he can come down on it and then start coming up, and at least he'll have a place to go now. And that to me is going to feel a little better if I move all of that up a little bit more and have my character continue moving, which will help with the arc and the movement. You see that kind of smooths that out a little bit more. Okay. Again, guys, everything is open for debate. The keys, they all have to, as you start putting more and more poses in, they all have to work together. So looking and changing your keys as you go is really important. Notice too, again, I'm not looking at the hands right now. I'm not looking at the head. I'm not even looking at the feet right now. I'm trying to get the core to do what the action is doing. Okay, and you guys can see that push as he pushes up into that pose. Everything stays down, and then everything will catch up later as far as the upper body. Okay, so say I was happy with that performance, even to like I have him pushing up faster. I can start looking at his feet. You know, do they need to come up faster? No, I think they're working okay right now for this pass. Don't get caught up in too many details. Just get caught up in the overall movement and how the whole torso is working. You want to work the whole pose. Okay, I think the head could be dragging a little bit more. Like I might look at the head now, and again the rotates on the head, and look to say, yeah, should you be sort of dragging a little bit more through here? You can even check the neck real quick if that's going to help my situation a little bit. Maybe I'll drag the head on that. Maybe if I want to, I was going to check the rotate. Yeah, whenever you see a spike like this, you should ask yourself, well, why did I spike my head so much here, right? And if I'm going to, I don't mind that turn that way. I like that drag that way. Maybe it's here. This one coming in, maybe it needs to start softening into that idea. And even this one's softening into that idea. Remember, progression's about the smoother the progression, the smoother the action. Okay, so when in doubt, if you're trying to smooth something out, if you have too much drastic change, even here, you know, I could really consider, like, does this, and that actually makes for a nicer line of action, right? So why not soften it up as it comes out, and then it can change later. Even here, I'll do that a little bit. Now, I'm not changing the handles, right? It's not about the curve right now. It's about the pose and the progression. Remind you of that, okay? Which is posing, you know. I'm going to try and look at that. I think this is too extreme on the rotate on the head here. Boom. I want that drag. It seems to come up too much here, so I'm going to keep it dragging a little bit and overshoot that a little bit more with the neck. I should really check the neck out too. And then I'll have it start coming back the other way. Okay. Obviously Y is in the mix, and that's where rotates get very difficult. When you see things flatlining too, and your character's moving, you should ask yourself why. And smoothing this out a little bit is going to probably help some. Even here, I'll get a little bit of movement there because he's moving and this stuff is shifting. I'm going to visit that neck and just check. Again, I thought I felt that up and down. Whenever you see something like this, it's going to be a wobble. It's a change of direction. Boom. And there, I'm probably going to want to keep this up a little bit longer, right? And then it'll smooth that out. And you see it there, it got much more quiet. Now, is this easy? Yes and no. If you're doing it while you're building, it can be. If you're specifically working probably from the hips out, that's the best way to do it. Keep your hips doing what they're supposed to, and then make proper decisions on what's going on between the two. Okay? Well, the two. With the hips up through the body, through the core. Okay? But posing it is only part of this thing. You've really done, if you've done your homework, you know what you want to do with the pose. Getting it to work, that's the animating part, and that's what you do in the graph editor as far as controlling the changes and making sure that when you're scrubbing through or hitting play, that stuff is doing what it's supposed to at the proper rate or speed. Okay? Once I get that pose working a little bit better, then I'll just roughly get in here and start looking at that hand too. I like the idea that this hand is coming down, so even I can say, well, maybe it's going to even stay back a little bit more, come over. I like it dragging this way, so I'm going to push that more. It's going to come over here. I want the swing. Again, I'm looking for the arc now, right? So let's arc it, pull it way down. It's going to come up. I don't want to muck this up, but I can pull it in a little bit more. And then it's going to come up and out. I'm going to push it even more here. And again, I'm roughing this out. I'll go back and look at the graph editor and actually try and clean this up even more. I'm going to bring this elbow down. The more I bring my hand up, the more I want to see that. And then the more maybe and rotate Z, I want to see a little bit more of that as it starts to come up. So even while I'm in here, you'll see I'll kind of jump back and forth, and that just makes sense to do that as it comes up. And obviously checking your poses like that a little bit more here. Rotates. Ooh, see that? Boom. That's probably not a good idea. I like the pose where it is there, so that means maybe I'm going to look at this pose here and say, yeah, let's do that so it keeps moving in the same direction. It'll be smoother that way. And then once again here, so it doesn't go down in flat line, I'll do that so it starts changing that way. And that's how you kind of smooth things out, as you can kind of see, right? Obviously, translates are really important, so I can be looking all at those through this process. Roughing it out, and then quickly going, yeah, well, why did it come? This is the in and out of this. So this is obviously my hand coming into the extreme, right, that key, towards the body. Then it's going to come out pretty fast, but it's going to stick a little bit. So why don't I bring it out a little bit more? Or did it come out too fast here? I like it. Well, actually, I'm going to do a little bit of halving, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to jump right back to Y. What you'll find with this rig, too, is in this hand, his right hand, down in the graph editor is up in the hand. It's the way it's set up. And you'll see the foot. There's one reversed foot that way, too. So, again, trying to figure that stuff out is going to be up to you, just taking a moment and grabbing that key and pushing it up or down. Okay? Maybe stopped updating. Maya is wrestling with me now. Okay, there, we're back. And I'm looking to strengthen that arc a little bit gone crazy now too, right? But you guys get the idea. So this is really the process. Again, you've done the work already as far as thinking about this stuff, and if you haven't, now's the time to think about what's going on between your keys and break and extremes, and you're looking for that forced offset. And then you're looking to get in here and drive this thing. Again, drive your core first, and then support it with what's going on with the other parts of your anatomy. Okay, boom. All right, guys, I hope that helps. This is just part of the the breakdown phase. The major breakdowns are going to look at slow-ins and moving holds next. So take a look at that next, and that's all required for turn-in. When we grade you on this, we are going to look to see if you are trying to control your progression. You should go through your whole scene, your whole character, checking on all the major movements. Okay, I haven't even got into posing the fingers yet. I'm just starting to even clean up the arc of one arm. I've only quickly tried to control my torso, but I really need to be looking at all of my spines and see what's going on with the progression there, making sure that's working the way it needs to. Okay, if you build it clean, it'll be slightly, it'll be fairly clean for you to tweak. But you still need to go in and evaluate your progression. Like whenever you see something going, like in this case, rotate, it reverses here and then goes up. Well, just evaluate that. Why did it go down here? And this is rotate Y, and then go up here, and then go back down again. You figure that out. What you should figure out first, though, is figure out whether the hips are doing what they're supposed to be doing first. So if the hips are clean, then you go up and you check your spine and clean up your spine and make sure that you're pretty smooth with your spine, and then you work up to the head. Okay. You can't really teach too much of this. As you can see, it takes a while. How you learn it is by doing it over and over again. And like the intro to the graph editor, if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that. Working with a simple sphere and controlling it in the graph editor and the progression will better prepare you to handle something like this. Okay. All right, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.